Sometimes it doesn't. Okay, one click.
Okay.
And then starter button.
All right, clutch in, obviously.
It doesn't need to be, it's in neutral.
Look at that. And then, so it's a standard 4 or 3?
4. Yep.
Wow, it's so light.
And it's way, you get into like Lee's car and the shift pattern is so much tighter, you almost run your hand into the dash because you're so used to this. Oh, parking brake.
Oh.
Push on that.
Oh, look at that. Okay. Very good. Anything else I should know?
No, I'm thinking and you're good. Oh.
No, not in gear.
There you go.
No power steering. So this is just a funny observation. I didn't realize he was going to follow us in another 356 Porsche. I thought there'd be a Camry back there or something like that. So,
oh no,
so
you need to experience the 59 as well, because you'll get to see the evolution from just 6 years. The step up that his car is from this one. Trust your instincts, young Jedi.
Yeah, my instincts are telling me to slow down.
The very first experience with 16-inch bi-sply tires, we did a 54 Speedster, and I distinctly remember that last turn we went through, driving at 55, and come up to it, it's a 50-mile-an-hour corner, you slow down, and I remember entering into the turn, and I kept turning the steering wheel, and the car was going straight, and your heart kind of starts pounding a little bit, and you just keep turning the wheel, and once the wheels have turned and you've taken up all the flex in the sidewall, then the car will start to turn. And once again, you get used to that, but that first drive, it's so different from what you're used to.
Literally an experience I've never had.
Yeah.
So this is Walt, and I'm finding a theme with cars that people love that they seem to name them. Mm-hmm. So how did Walt get his name?
It's pretty simple. We went and looked at this car and decided to buy it, and the guy's name who we bought it from was Walt, and it just kind of fit. So
it looks like a Walt. So what condition was the car in when you got it?
Pretty much as you see it, except the doors were off, the lids were off.
Was this car inside or outside at the time?
It was in a little 2-car garage.
Okay.
And the guy had bought it in '63, drove it till '73. At which point put it in the garage, and then he started disassembling it. Later on, when we look inside the trunk and the engine compartment, you'll see red primer. He painted the rusty areas with paint. He pop riveted metal in the floor pan because he was gonna fix it up. And of course,
It just
that
life
stalled out.
happens,
Yeah.
and it just didn't happen.
And so older retired gentleman, and just decided it was time to move it on.
Did the car run?
No.
So he called you guys. How did you find out about this car?
Long story. A friend of his went and looked at the car and realized it was going to be a huge project. So he passed on it, and his buddy told us, and so that's when we contacted Walt and went up and looked at it.
And what did you guys have to do? How long did it sit before you guys did anything with it?
So it's a 53. Walt bought it in 63.
Okay.
Drove it till 73, and at which time from 73 to 2018 it was dormant.
That's a nice way to put it.
It was resting comfortably.
And looking at it from this perspective, it looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. But if you kind of work your way around here, and so most people would have the urge to restore something like this, but you guys preferred to keep it original.
Well, yeah.
Original-ish. Completely off base with that.
So times have changed a little bit. It used to be that the early cars, they called this a Prie. It used to be these cars weren't thought very much of because the steering boxes were actually a Volkswagen steering box. Later cars, they went to a ZF box, which was a smoother, tighter box.
Okay.
So the early cars were just a little rougher around the edges. So there was a time when nobody really cared for the 55 and early cars because they rode rougher. 16-inch bias ply tires. Later cars were 15-inch, and you can put radials on. So they are a different feel.
And was that kind of the perspective when you got this car? Was not in the most desirable category?
Oh, we were looking for an early car.
Right.
I mean, we were excited to buy it.
But not everybody else was looking for an early car.
At that time,
right.
It wasn't as desirable.
Right.
If someone wants to jump in and drive across the country, a later car is certainly a better choice.
Right.
As far because the improvements with engine, transmission, brakes, but once again, the aspect of early cars are pretty cool.
So tell me about the trip. Who conceived the idea of where is Rennsport at in the first place?
Laguna Seca.
Okay.
Monterey, California.
Okay. And so if I'm correct, you had the idea of, hey, let's take this derelict 356 and go to California.
In February of 2018, we were planning on going to Rennsport in September of 18, and in February, one morning I looked at Neil and said, if we would get Walt in and put a motor in it, do the brakes, we might be able to drive that to Rennsport and back. And he got a funny look on his face, and that was it. It was on. Yeah.
It was on at that point. Yeah. And so at the time, the car did not have a motor in it, so you took a motor out of Neil's car, correct?
So it did have a motor and tranny in it. We ended up, our thought was to rebuild a later motor and put in. And along the way, we decided we would update the transmission too. So we went through that process of putting a later transmission in, And as we were working in the shop and working on this in the evenings, all of a sudden, a month would go by and another month, and pretty soon we realized that if we keep going like this, there's no way we're going to get a motor together. So that's when we stole the motor out of Lee's 59
Okay.
and put that motor in.
So I'm going to digress just here for a second. I'm going to pan over here to the rest of the shop. And so at the time, you guys were doing your daytime work, putting these guys together, not these guys specifically, and then at night after supper, you would come out and work till midnight trying to get Walt all together for this trip. How long did it take to put Walt together and feel like you had a reasonably solid car to do this trip? How many hours did you put into it?
Oh,
That's the first rule. Don't keep track of your own hours in your own cars.
Right. Okay.
But we pushed it right to the end. It only had 44 miles on it before we hopped in and went to California and back.
It's pretty rare. So let's take a look at the interior, because I think there's a good story with that. Maybe you can open the door for me. There we go. All right. So was this the interior that it had when you took it to Rennsport?
yes.
Okay.
The seats are speedster seats.
And the Indian blanket is something that was not standard in a Porsche at the time?
I told my wife Carolyn about it'd be neat to get an Indian blanket maybe to do the interior with. So she got on Amazon, and about, was it a week before we left? We got the fabric and made that. We had different seats in that had the same Indian blankets on there. They're a more comfortable seat for long distance.
Okay.
Where this is, these kind of get to you after a bit.
And it's my understanding that you did the sewing to put the seats together, or all the Indian blanket stuff together?
Yeah. Well, that's pretty easy.
You're pretty talented. I mean, in a way I wouldn't expect. I mean, I've seen pictures of you working with the English wheel and the things you can do with that, but not everybody can sew. So, but your mother is an amazing seamstress, and she taught you. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm confused. Are these the seats that you went to Rennsport in, or no?
No, these are not.
Okay.
They're in my 59 right now. So, yeah, these are.
They're pretty. I like these seats. They're very beautiful.
Yeah, but when you're doing 800-900 mile days, the
other seats are cushier.
Yeah.
Not much comfort involved with these.
And have you done much in the line of body work for Walt? I mean, as far as it looks pretty solid.
Yeah, we didn't do anything. This is
Pretty much the way it was.
Yeah. Close the door there. The doors were down in the basement, so they don't match up color-wise very well. Well, they sort of match up, but we just put her together and went.
And what exactly is this color?
A friend of ours calls it concrete, because when he was following us out to Rennsport and back, he said the car disappears.
Oh.
He goes, it looks just like concrete. He said, you cannot see that car at all.
So did you have any problems on the way out? Was there anything?
We didn't have problems the way out or back.
The first problem we had was driving in a crosswind of 30 mile an hour crosswind with these skinny little bias ply tires, and they're kind of like driving on marshmallows. So it took the first day for us to get the feel of how it was going, but
then we were good.
So did it, I mean, at any point, did it feel like 75 miles an hour was not controllable?
Going around a semi or having a semi pass you was interesting, but you get used to it. And yeah, you're definitely aware of the road, and if there's a crosswind, and if you get into a hilly spot where there's hills, because the wind won't hit you if you're driving through a hill the road has been cut into, right?
Right.
So you're very aware of your situation, the wind.
Did you take spares with you?
We took as many parts as we thought we might need.
So we'll call this the engine lid then. I wasn't sure to call it a trunk or a boot or what we're going to call it. So what does Walt have for an engine right now?
It has got a 63 1600 super motor. Originally it would have had a 1500 normal motor.
Okay. So how many horsepower does this make?
Oh.
75.
75. Okay. So what was looking back to the original days when these first came out, what was the original lure to these? I mean, were they considered that fast at the time? When you're looking at everything else that was available?
Yeah. Well, in 1951, they took 2 cars to Le Mans and won their class. So, they were so aerodynamic, they didn't take as much horsepower, plus they were very reliable.
Okay.
So it was a good combination,
And these were more, if I remember right, California played a big role in the Porsche being accepted, and before James Dean. I mean, there are other movie stars that were car guys that really appreciated the handling of these cars, and they weren't that high of horsepower or that fast in acceleration, but they could kill everything in the curves.
Yeah, giant killers was common, and they were often called the German Jewel because they were so well made.
Oh, So what do people tell you? Tell me that again.
Well, when I started driving mine, people would say, "Well, that's just a glorified Beetle, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, yes, but it's glorified in all the right places." So
that makes sense. How much was a 356 new?
A Cadillac.
Was it the equivalent of a Cadillac?
Yeah.
So it was pretty pricey then.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dad bought a Beetle new in 59, yeah, and up in Cedar Rapids, and he said there was a 356 on the showroom floor. And we're like, "Dad, why didn't you get the 356? And he said, "It was double the price of the Beetle, and I didn't have the money to buy the Beetle, really."
Pretty cool.
Neil's going to give us a tour of the interior.
Okay, lots of things going on this dash. It's almost like a new Escalade, right?
It's pretty basic.
Key, windshield, or light switch, windshield wipers, dome light, dash lights, starter button, choke cable.
So this had starter buttons before starter buttons were cool.
Correct.
Actually, kind of like a tractor almost.
Yeah,
for the
right.
time. Yeah.
And the choke cable, I mean, we forget about those, right? Like old cars used to have them.
Right.
Nothing now. And so the choke, the S in German, they call the choke cable the strangler. And so that's why there's a S on that. Some cars could be fitted with optional radios.
So the radio is almost as big as our infotainment centers now.
and the power unit, I mean, if you look, this comes all the way back to here,
Right.
and then there's a power unit under the toe board there that it was the power unit for the radio. And of course, this car was 6 volt, and we have updated it for 12 volts. So of course the radio doesn't work. Heater cable, or the heater control,
Right.
cigarette lighter, and then they call this the mystery knob or the dummy knob. Apparently they decided that this looked wrong without something there. So this knob does nothing, which is so unlike Porsche to have something on their car that really has no basic function other than for looks.
So no one's ever adapted that to do anything over time.
Well, maybe, but
The one story I heard was that some of the early cars had a vent up front, and that was for a pull cable for the vent.
That would make sense.
So
So flow through air conditioning at that point.
so one interesting thing on these early cars is the turn signal lever has a transparent red cap, and then when you
So you know you're
actuate it, this is your turn signal light. There's no light on the dash or in the gauges to tell you that you're turning. And then it's a non-canceling turn signal. You have to do that yourself.
I don't even know when they came out with canceling turn signals, self-canceling.
Yeah, I'm going to say
That had to be.
56.
Was it that early? I was thinking 70s, but
no, mid 50s.
Okay.
American stuff started.
so the one thing I noticed missing here is I don't see a windshield sprayer. Was there?
That was an option. You could get a hand pump down here that you would pump, and there were nozzles, and this
Essentially, the squirt gun.
yes, and that was a lot of times that was something that would have been dealer installed.
And so the visors tinted?
Yeah, so this is the original visor. It's 53 was they kind of cheapened them up a little bit to keep the price the same. So standard, this car only had one sun visor on the driver's side, and you could have got them on the other side. But what someone did here is they took a unit out of like a 56 or 7 Beetle, and
Oh, okay.
originally this would have been mounted here. This was the driver's side, and then the mirror would have came off of this end and been right there. Well, they cut that off and moved the driver's side over there.
So that was done before you got the car.
Actually, no, we
You
did that.
So that's a period-specific modification. that
It was
you
something
guys did.
that
I think it's a great idea.
it really is necessary when you're driving into the sun, and we wanted something that was going to be period and not stick out like, a car like this. If you need a new bolt, if you need a bolt, you can't just put a nice shiny new bolt in,
right.
So you dig through your selection of old bolts and find ones that are all grungy and rusty and ratty looking, and you use that. And we happen to have this, which, wasn't in the best shape, so you were never going to use it on a car that you were going to restore.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the perfect place to use some parts that aren't perfect. Like the hubcaps. We were missing a couple hubcaps, and we went through our selection of hubcaps and found some that had some dents and dings, and otherwise, normally those parts would not get used. You would either refinish them or you'd buy reproduction. And so it was a fun way to put old parts back into use.
Well, and that's the beauty of a car like this, and part of the reason I like doing this series is, and you guys told me this when I had my 930, sometimes the car owns you.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's really nice to have a car that really you can do whatever you want, and you can take it, you can enjoy it. You don't care how many miles you put on it. You don't care really what you do with it within limits, because it's not going to change, and you're not going to damage anything by enjoying it.
You can park next to a Suburban and not worry
About
that,
the giant door ding.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because if it happens,
it's going to hurt their vehicle, and they're going to notice it before we notice it on our car.
right. So this is just magnificent. I think it's about time that we go for a drive.
All right.
Yeah. To be honest, I was a little bit intimidated by Walt and the, let's say, the early technology that Walt represents. So it's been great. Maybe we'll do another car again soon.
Yeah,
Something like maybe a 442 Olds.
Maybe.
That could happen.
That might be possible.
We'll see you guys. You guys have a great day. We'll see you out there.